If you're hearing this, then the signal held. I don't know how long it took to reach you. I'm rotating through 4 different repeater sites and bouncing off 2 decommissioned military towers. The signal degradation is worse near urban clusters, probably jammed or scrubbed. If it cuts, wait 10 minutes and retune. I'll come back. I always do. Name's not important. But I'll tell you what I was. I was a data architect in Northern Virginia, backbone country, where most of the world's internet traffic flows. 60%, give or take. AWS clusters, fiber hubs, deep server farms cooled by recycled water and sealed behind biometric locks. I held key privileges in 4 facilities and federated read access to 2 more, one in Lorton, one near Gaithersburg. I thought I knew what power looked like, until I saw what was hidden beneath the racks. I'll get to that. But this started not with the machines, but with someone I loved. My wife. Systems logic specialist. Doctorate level. NOAA's climate division. Smart, relentless, and careful in ways I didn't notice at first. We lived in a condo near Potomac Yard overlooking the old rail line. She always closed the curtains at dusk, stopped eating garlic years ago, claimed it triggered migraines. I thought it was stress, work hours. Then she stopped sleeping. When she asked me if I ever wondered how people rise to the top in this country, how anyone actually crosses the invisible ceiling, we were sitting in our kitchen. She was dead calm, not a flick of emotion. She said the ceiling isn't invisible, it's enforced. Quietly. She said the only way past it is to be invited through. And she offered. Not verbally. She just extended her hand, let her nails lengthen just slightly, showed her teeth. Subtly, not theatrically, and said, either you join, or you're erased. There's no third option. I took her hand. The process wasn't like folklore. No coffins, no dirt, no midnight rites. It was cellular, viral, delivered in a micro-infusion. A glass vial she retrieved from a false panel behind the freezer, marked with a symbol I'd later learn was the family crest of the Order of the First Flame, one of the 5 blood dynasties. This one ran 2 biotech firms and had a controlling interest in no less than 8 energy conglomerates across 3 continents. I was turned. Not by an elder, but by her, a half-step, which meant I was something between human and their kind. Not full access, not full immunity, just enough to be useful, disposable. But something else happened when I changed. My perception sharpened. Memory retention increased tenfold. Patterns that were once opaque now unfolded like source code, and I saw the rot beneath the protocol layers. I started tracing system admin logs for anomalous activity. Buried beneath routine tasks were priority accesses marked with restricted location flags, always at odd hours. 3:14 a.m., 4:47 a.m. staff not scheduled to be present, but the physical logs showed movement. DNA access confirmed. Retinal scans verified. The same names kept appearing. Names with no HR file, no social trace. Just access. I flagged one. L. Orvin. The badge was assigned to a Level 5 technician at the Equinix DC-11 facility. But L. Orvin had no photo, no emergency contact, no known origin. And yet the logs showed over 400 entries in the past 12 months, all within the data vault, beneath the main server bay. I went to check myself. It took 3 days of rerouting my credentials through internal firewalls. I entered under the cover of an after-hours network stress test. Floor was empty, chilled to 64 degrees. I passed 3 badge checkpoints before reaching the lower level. What I saw there changed me. Rows of glass cells, not servers, not drives. People. Dozens. Suspended. Cuffed at the ankles. Tubes inserted into their arms. Not sedated. Aware. Some were crying. Others silent. One woman mouthed, "Help." Their blood was being filtered, chilled, labeled, sealed, and routed to a cold chain vault I didn't have clearance for. Each bag bore an alphanumeric code and a red wax seal. The emblem again. A sun with a line through it. No light, no exposure. They were the herd. And that was just one location. When I confronted Evelyn, when I showed her what I saw, she didn't deny it. She only said, "You were never meant to see past the role they gave you." And then she turned to leave. I didn't follow. I disappeared, faked a work dispute, triggered my exit protocols, and staged a data breach trail to redirect attention to a rival contractor. I moved west, then south, then east again. Changed cars 3 times, burned my old ID, found shelter in an abandoned NOAA relay station. Solar battery backfeed, signal tower intact, analog equipment functional. That's where I am now, broadcasting. This frequency was originally a weather emergency band, never officially decommissioned. Most modern receivers skip past it automatically. But if you found this, you're listening on old hardware. That's good. Keep it that way. Digital channels are compromised. Here's what you need to know. The outbreak isn't new. It's been cultivated, controlled, for over 3 centuries. The top tiers of global wealth, beyond CEOs, beyond heads of state, are occupied by them. Not metaphorically, literally. They don't just feed, they breed order. They decide which wars are fought, which countries collapse, which cities receive emergency humanitarian drops, and which are left to starve, not for cruelty, for flavor. Suffering affects the blood. They call it resonance. Children missing from orphanages, test groups, vessels bred for compatibility. Runaways found weeks later with blood drained and organs intact, trials. The livestock model is real, structured, efficient, even compassionate in their words. The United Nations food programs? Some are legit, others are feeders. The Red Cross lost a warehouse in Geneva 3 months ago. Official story was a gas leak. I pulled satellite logs. Radiation sensors showed no combustion. What they were hiding was a blood processing center, high-value blood types only, mostly AB negative. That's why I'm speaking now. To tell the truth, not just horror, but the cracks forming. Not all vampires agree, some are defecting. Some low-tier converts like me are resisting. Others are helping quietly, leaking transport manifests, exposing shipment routes, smuggling out those who were meant to be drained. It's small, but it's happening. If you're human and you're listening, do not trust mass relocations. If your city begins issuing night curfews without explanation, move. If your district's blood banks begin sudden inventory upgrades, leave. If you're one of us, turned, but unaligned, find your moment. Fight with what you have. Silver won't help, that's a myth. But UV does. Sun lamps, welding torches, flares. I'll keep talking. Every night, 0200 hours Eastern, I'll change channels, but I'll return to this one every few hours. Rotate your dials. If you hear static, stay on it. Wait, I'll come back. There are more of us than they know. We were bred to be food. Now we are awake. And we will not be herded again. If you're just tuning in, rewind. Listen from the top. This isn't entertainment. This isn't folklore. This is infrastructure. This is architecture. This is how the world really works, and why you've never seen the bones beneath the skin. Tonight I want to talk about logistics, blood routes, supply chains, the hidden arteries. When I first accessed the internal schema behind one of the Equinix facilities, I found something odd. An unmarked subnet routing out of Northern Virginia, bypassing the fiber trunk entirely and feeding into a satellite link that wasn't on the FCC registry. The handoff bounced over Greenland, looped through Turkmenistan, and terminated in a base that doesn't exist on any NATO map. They call it Node 7. I learned that term from a file dump. Corrupted metadata pulled off a crashed maintenance drone near Reston. The drone wasn't military. It was private sector, outfitted with blood refrigeration units and a telemetry beacon tagged to a pharmaceutical NGO I'd never heard of, Solace Biologics, supposedly a gene therapy nonprofit out of Belgium. But their web records were scrubbed 3 weeks before the drone was even active. The site went offline after a DNS change, one that redirected visitors to a 404 loop but pinged a server in Cluj-Napoca, Romania. Why Romania? That's where one of the oldest bloodlines began. The Order of the First Flame, the one Evelyn belonged to. History books write them off as superstition, tales of Transylvanian nobility and mythic monsters. But in reality, the First Flame were aristocrats with control over land, taxation, and medical institutions in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They didn't drink blood to survive. They used it to exert dominance. The feeding was secondary to control. That legacy carried forward. They migrated with the financial elite. They built shell companies, lobby networks, and NGOs. By 1937, they had influence in 9 central banks. By 1979, they'd embedded agents in biotech boards across North America. And today, they run blood logistics like FedEx runs packages. There are feeder zones, regions where humans are monitored, manipulated, and harvested. Not always fatally, sometimes a pint at a time, sometimes in full. It depends on the market demand. Blood is cataloged, tracked by genotype, chemical composition, hormone saturation. Trauma raises cortisol. Fear adds scent notes. Malnutrition reduces desirability. All of this is quantified and priced. Most of this happens out of sight. But if you want proof, watch the shipping containers, sis. Ever notice how some humanitarian supply trucks are triple locked, have blacked out windows? Ever ask why a vehicle delivering rice needs biometric access panels? In February, a convoy headed north from Charleston. 4 unmarked trucks, no license plates, moving under night escort through West Virginia. Supposedly emergency food delivery for disaster relief. Except there was no disaster, no declaration, no news coverage. What I found out, after cross-referencing internal GPS pings with customs records, is that those trucks weren't carrying food. They were extracting blood. The donors were from a federal detention center, quietly transferred under protective custody status, but they never arrived at the next listed facility. 2 of those trucks are now missing. The other 2? Traced to a private airstrip near Bluefield. Flight records list a charter jet registered to an offshore entity. That jet hasn't landed anywhere in FAA records since it left U.S. airspace. Gone. I leaked the shipping manifests on a dark mail client 3 weeks ago. I know some of you read them. One reply came from Buenos Aires, another from Izmir. A third from someone calling themselves Breaker 12 said he worked port security in Tampa, that he saw a similar shipment, only this time it was refrigerated containers, not trucks, and one of them was leaking. That container was marked with a symbol, a sun crossed out by a single line. First Flame. He said the liquid smelled sweet. I told him not to open it, haven't heard back since. Now, I know this sounds massive, unstoppable, but even empires have pressure points. Supply chains stretch. They rely on secrecy, coordination, anonymity. But the moment someone sees the whole diagram, that's when control falters. We're in that moment now, because the system is showing strain. Some of their facilities are dark. Smaller outposts haven't been resupplied. Their food supply is getting tighter. Not just because of rebellion, but because humans are noticing. You, the listeners, the ones asking questions, and the ones breaking rank. I got a shortwave message from someone in Portland, call sign Almond Core. Said she was a tech in a gene sequencing lab. She ran an anonymous blood panel from a walk-in client last month. The result returned 2 anomalies. First, a complete lack of human mitochondrial markers. Second, elevated CR1 expression. That's a complement regulator, a protein usually involved in immune system suppression. In this case, the level was off the charts. She reported it. The next morning, her supervisor vanished, replaced by someone she'd never seen before, claimed to be internal ethics counsel. Same voice as a man she'd heard before in a very different context, once at a late-night lecture hosted by a biotech CEO known to keep windows blacked out during the day. She's hiding now, broadcasting from a frequency I won't name. But she sent me a traceable code snippet, part of the sequence. I'm going to read it because if anything happens to me, I want it out there. ACGGTCACTAA CR1CR1X004 VRN ALT. Those last three flags, VRN, ALT, match a database used by 6 pharmaceutical partners involved in blood screening for donor compatibility. Partners tied to World Health monitoring programs, refugee relief efforts, and 2 vaccine research subsidiaries. Again, I'm not here to terrify you. I'm here to warn you. There is a growing resistance. In upstate New York, a former military communications specialist, call sign Elias 7, intercepted encrypted telemetry from an aerial drone that had been circling a residential area. That drone had LiDAR sensors tuned not for topography, but for blood density, pulse readings from altitude. He said he jammed the signal, downed the drone, pulled its hard drive. What he found was a profile list. Faces, ages, blood types, trauma histories, all cross-referenced with geolocation data. One girl had been flagged with an orange code, prime donor, do not waste. She was 12. That's why I keep broadcasting. This war isn't a war of weapons. It's a war of memory, of awareness. They rely on our blindness, on distraction, on disbelief. If you're listening to this, you're awake. Stay that way. Keep your radios analog, your movements irregular. Use flare lights when needed, but never twice in the same location. If you find others like you, trust slowly. Share information only on paper, never digitally. Watch for false defectors. They use turncoats to map resistance cells. But we are learning faster. The herd is waking, and soon the blood will no longer flow one way. Stay sharp, stay human. I'll be back in a few hours. Same frequency, different time. Rotating between towers now. This one is Tower 179, an old Cold War microwave relay station. It's not on any commercial grid anymore. Diesel backup failed last week, but the solar panels are still operational, and the transmission coils are buried deep enough to avoid aerial sweep. I shouldn't stay long. I picked up chatter last night, encoded pulses across low-frequency bands. Subharmonics, outside human perception. I traced the carrier to a listening post near Norfolk, former NSA site. Long abandoned, at least on paper. But it's active now, and someone's listening for us. They're calling it the fracture. Let me explain. There's been a split. Not all vampires agree with the old order. Some of them, especially the lower-tier conversions, the ones turned by other defectors, are breaking away. They call themselves the disavowed. Not freedom fighters, not heroes, just outcasts, survivors like us. They believe the livestock model is obsolete, that humans should be left alone, that the thirst should be controlled. They're hated for it, marked, hunted. But some of them are still inside the system, feeding intel outward, helping the resistance. Last week, one of them breached an archive facility under New York. The official name is the Crown Project, but internally it's logged as Vault Theta. I've only seen pieces of it, fragments of extracted documentation uploaded through burst packet shortwave signals. Most of it's code names and logistics tables. But one report caught my attention. It was titled Substitution Model A. In short, it's a contingency plan. A way to replace direct blood harvesting with an artificial compound, synthesized from human proteins, stabilized with certain enzymes found only in post-trauma plasma. Translation: they're trying to create synthetic blood, but it still requires human suffering to bind properly. They can't break their addiction. They can only shift the means. The breach lasted just under 9 minutes before internal lockdown activated, but it was enough to expose the site, enough for the disavowed to pull partial floor plans and an access roster. That roster included names you'd recognize. 2 senior consultants from the Department of Energy, 1 private equity manager with holdings in over 60 hospital networks, and a retired astronaut. I don't know how deep this goes, but when astronauts show up in donor development files, you have to ask, what else have we colonized? Maybe not space, maybe just the genome. I want to share a message now. It's a recording. Came in via burst signal from a relay off the Appalachian Trail, somewhere near Roanoke. The sender's call sign is Claire 9. She was a systems analyst for a biotech company under the Biogena Group umbrella. She went dark a week ago, but her last message was captured in a clean block. I'm going to read it exactly as she wrote it. If this reaches anyone, I was in charge of integration for sample batches 1049 through 1072. We were told these were post-op plasma donations, voluntary. But the genetic markers, these weren't adult donors. They were pediatric, high trauma load, sleep-disrupted cortisol curves. Some were missing markers entirely. I followed the internal packet trail, found references to Group Eden. That's what they call the farm. It's not a metaphor. It's a literal facility. Somewhere in Nevada. I've seen partial satellite overlays. Looks like an agricultural test site, greenhouses. But the heat maps show dozens of sublevels. Whatever they're doing there, it's not farming food. Claire ended that message with a warning. They're accelerating timelines. Something's gone wrong. Supply is breaking down. One elder is dead. Don't trust night deliveries. I think she was right. Something's happening behind the curtain, fast. Earlier this month, 5 blood processing centers in Europe went dark within 48 hours. 1 in Utrecht, 1 in Lyon, 2 in rural Slovakia. The last one was outside of Dresden. No explosions, no emergency declarations, just silence. And then the panic started. Because the feeders aren't just feeding anymore. They're turning rogue. Some are starving. Some are switching to open hunting, violating centuries of secrecy, attacking populated areas, exposing themselves. It's spreading faster than they can control. That's why curfews are going up again. That's why you're hearing new phrases on local emergency alerts, thermal safety period, extended shelter dusk protocol, biocontainment perimeter breaches. That's their code for containment failure, vampire outbreaks. I've seen one myself. 3 days ago, I passed through a small town called Stony Creek, Interstate 95, southbound rest stop. Looked abandoned, quiet, too quiet. I stopped for water, walked around the back of a closed diner. There was a man propped against the ice machine, pale, eyes unfocused. Not bleeding, but I knew the signs. He wasn't freshly turned, he was drained, in stages. You could tell by the way the skin collapsed at the temples, not violent, methodical, efficient. And it wasn't just him. There were 8 others inside, slumped in booths, not restrained, not panicked. As if they'd volunteered or been conditioned. When I turned to leave, I noticed a flyer taped to the window. Looked like a menu, but the print was strange. The header wasn't in English. It was in Latin. Praebenda sanguinis. Blood offering. Below it, time slots, names. They weren't hiding it anymore. I burned the place to the ground. Some might call that reckless. I call it disinfecting the wound. We can't save every town, not anymore. Some are gone, already consumed, turned into feeder outposts. But we can stop the spread. One signal at a time, one breach at a time, one voice. If you're listening, record this. Replay it. Share it on analog loops. Avoid the cloud. Avoid digital anything. They scan every byte. Broadcasts like this survive only because they move, because we don't repeat ourselves. Remember, silver is a myth. Holy water? Myth. Wooden stakes? Useless. But sunlight works. UV, true spectrum halogen. Even welding arcs, if focused. If you have access to high-intensity UV lamps, arc lights, tanning beds, industrial sterilizers, use them. Mount them on your roof. Trigger them remotely. It won't kill an elder, but it'll burn them. And for the lower-tier feeders, it'll drive them back. Use mirrors to extend range. Angle them. Think like a technician. That's how you survive. I'll rotate frequencies at 0200. You'll find me on band 1080 again in 6 hours. If the signal cuts, stay on frequency. Wait 10 minutes, then retune down by 10. We are not finished. The fracture has begun. And the herd remembers, and you're hearing this through a relayed signal bouncing off 2 ham. If this audio is degraded, it's because I had to rig a bypass through a cracked alternator belt and a damaged inverter array. Half the power cells I scrounged were already running at below 60%, but I'm not stopping, not now. Tonight I'm going to talk about Eden. Not the storybook one, not the Garden of Myth. The real one. Group Eden. The term came up twice in buried documentation from Solace Biologics. A third time in metadata embedded in the drone logs I pulled near Ashburn. I mentioned it before, Claire 9's recording. She said Eden wasn't metaphorical. It was a literal site, somewhere in Nevada. I've spent the last 4 days chasing that lead. And I found it. Well, something. 43 miles northeast of Tonopah, beyond the Tonopah test range. But before Area 6, there's an unmarked grid plot. Looks like abandoned BLM land from the satellite overheads. Scrub, desert, no infrastructure. But the pattern's wrong. I counted 12 square plots, each identical in layout, greenhouse structures above ground, each spaced exactly 122 meters apart with what looks like a single vehicle access road linking them all to a central pad. No visible solar, no above-ground HVAC, no tracks leading in, no water source. You only design like that when the real structure is underground. The site ID shows up in one place only, a subcontractor manifest for a company called Zenith Cryo Logistics, registered in Cyprus. Filed under Experimental Hematic Storage, Agricultural Interface. And here's the strange part. When I tried to find Zenith's website, it forwarded me, briefly, to a domain labeled theirdharvest.info, just a blank page. One sentence. The herd must sleep to remain sweet. Then the page disappeared. That was 2 days ago. Now, every time I try to access it, I get a silent redirect to a pharmacy website in Germany. They're hiding it. But I got lucky. An old contact, call sign Moreno Delta. Used to work drone surveillance for a telecom contractor. Back when they were mapping terrain for 5G towers, they accidentally logged heat anomalies outside Tonopah. One of those anomalies matched Eden's coordinates. Temperature was too consistent for desert, low 60s Fahrenheit even at midday. That only happens if there's heavy substructure cooling below. Yet, chilled blood storage, or live containment. Moreno sent me stills. One frame showed a truck, white, unmarked, with a refrigeration unit mounted on the cab roof. The side panel was open, and inside, racks, stainless steel, not for food, for blood bags. I cross-checked the make and model with FEMA's Emergency Logistics Database. That type of vehicle, International Durastar retrofitted with cold chain systems, is only used for Level 4 biohazard material transport, which means Eden isn't just a holding facility. It's a lab, and possibly a breeding ground. I hesitate to say that, but the data points are converging. Blood isn't being just harvested, it's being modified, enhanced. Certain strains are being prioritized, especially trauma blood, hormone-saturated. Blood drawn during psychological distress carries elevated norepinephrine and adrenaline, compounds which apparently act like narcotics to elder-tier feeders. One file I decrypted listed these samples as delta rations. Another called them stimulant class 3. The implications are horrifying. We're not just being fed on. We're being engineered. Our suffering is their drug. I don't know how many sites like Eden exist, but if even one is functional, it means this war is already further along than we thought. But here's the twist. There's evidence the system is collapsing from within. Last night I caught a burst signal on 7:20 a.m., someone broadcasting briefly from west of Albuquerque. I only caught 5 words. Eden offline, subjects loose, burned. That was it. No signature, no return ping, just static after. But it matches a rumor I'd heard weeks earlier. One of the feeder sites in Nevada experienced an internal revolt. Some of the captives escaped. A security lockdown failed. Fire started, likely intentional. The ventilation system spread the blaze before they could contain it. Several mid-tier handlers didn't make it out. If that's true, then there's hope. Hope that even in the belly of the beast the herd is remembering who they are. That we are not cattle, not product, not rations. We are minds. We are families. We are fire. And fire spreads. Speaking of fire, I want to address the myth of self-defense again. I said before, silver doesn't work. That's a cultural holdover. Same with garlic. Stake through the heart? It might kill a human. It won't do much to a fully turned feeder. But there are weapons that work. High-frequency UV arrays. You can salvage them from certain medical sterilizers. Older model Davlin Series 7, for example, has the output you need. Find one, rig a capacitor, discharge trigger, and you've got a burn radius of 3 meters. Set it at doorways. Use mirrors to angle the arc. Another option, phosphor grenades, military surplus. Hard to get. But if you know anyone who served pre-2010, they might still have access. White phosphor eats tissue, even theirs. I've also heard rumors of a synthetic compound called HX9, developed in a DARPA lab as a blood clotting accelerator for trauma care. Turns out it causes intense cellular binding failure in feeder tissue. I haven't confirmed that. But if anyone has access to medical stocks, look for it. It may be in expired combat med kits. Use what you have, improvise, but never rely on the old myths. They've kept us blind for centuries with stories about garlic and holy water. The real weapons were always science, light, and truth. Truth like this. I'm going to rotate channels soon. The generator's running low and I need to conserve power for the next burst. But before I go, I want to repeat something I heard on a cracked voice file from someone in the Appalachians. Might have been a kid. His voice was trembling but steady. He said, "They treat us like we're nothing, but a herd can turn. All it takes is one spark, just one, and the fire will come." You're listening now. That spark might be you. I'll be back at 0200 hours. Watch the skies. Avoid trains. Avoid underground shelters. Avoid any emergency shelter that asks for your blood type on arrival. We are the resistance now. We are the memory of light. And we are not done. Signal holding steady. I patched the coil using copper wire stripped from an old elevator motor. Rough, but it works. If you're still listening, then you're alive. And that means more than you know. Because last night the Chicago towers fell. I'm not talking about skyscrapers. I'm talking about the Central Processing Network. Tower 6, Tower 13, and Tower 21, part of the urban blood grid, disguised as data transmission masts, each wired into the city's utility backbone. Most people never knew what they were for. The towers weren't about 5G or cellular bandwidth or digital television. Those were decoys, ghost signals. What they really did was monitor thermographic and biometric output across the population grid. In other words, they scanned for blood. Specifically, blood density, hormone profiles, and pulse clusters. Each tower triangulated potential high-value donors and cross-referenced them with public service records, hospital admissions, traffic violations, prescription drug history. You go to the ER for a broken wrist, you get flagged. You pick up anti-anxiety medication, flagged. You move to a quieter neighborhood, flagged for emotional profile retesting. You become sweet. That's the term they used in internal logs. Sweetness rating. How compliant you were, how likely you were to submit, how unlikely you were to fight. Tower 6 monitored the loop. Tower 13 covered North Chicago through Evanston. Tower 21 extended as far south as Joliet. All three went offline within 15 minutes of each other last night. I don't have all the details, only fragments. But what I've heard, what I've pieced together points to coordinated sabotage from the inside. Someone, maybe several people, breached the control access ports. These are supposed to be secure, biometric, double-gated. Quantum encryption at the authentication layer. But they weren't built by engineers. They were built by arrogant predators who never thought prey would fight back. One of the saboteurs used an acid compound to strip the outer panel. Another deployed a micro-EMP charge, military grade, likely stolen or salvaged. The final kill was a voltage overload. pumped back up the power spine to fry the central thermal core. Tower 21 exploded. Not collapsed. Exploded. Thermal bloom visible for 7 blocks. I received multiple eyewitness accounts, most describing a sound like a pressure seal bursting, followed by a high-pitched whine, and then silence. No police, no fire response. Instead, within 11 minutes, 4 black SUVs arrived on scene. No markings, no license plates. All drivers wore reflective visors and high-neck coats. They didn't speak to locals, just scanned the site and left. Cleaners. You don't see them unless something truly catastrophic has happened to the order. And that means the breach worked. Someone in Chicago just fired a flare in the dark, and it lit up everything. To whoever you are, I don't know your name, I may never know your face. But if you're listening, you lit the match, and now the map's on fire. The truth is there are others like you, like us. I've been tracking small clusters of resistance, movements that begin with whispers and end in flame. A group out of Cincinnati disabled 2 transport drones last month. They hid in the old subway tunnels under the Over-the-Rhine district, used a mirrored panel array to reflect daylight through a collapsed ceiling shaft. When the drones descended to retrieve tagged donors, the light lanced through their shells. The drones melted, not mechanically, biologically, because those weren't unmanned aerial systems. They were synthetic hybrids, sleeved in alloy, yes, but piloted by neuroresponsive tissue. Organic, which means they bleed. And if they bleed, they can die. Even the machines aren't machines anymore. They're growing vessels. That's how deep the rot goes. This is what you were never meant to understand. The entire system, healthcare, finance, infrastructure, is scaffolded around consumption. Blood is currency. Not metaphorically. Actually. It flows through sealed networks, tracked like high-value commodities. I intercepted a packet from a private trading desk in Geneva. It listed 20 donors, anonymous, categorized by blood type, hormone load, age, and genetic purity. The top listed individual was a 10-year-old from Pennsylvania. Group AB negative, emotional trauma index, 91%. No, sale price, 6 figures. Currency, R, not USD, not Euro. Just R. If you know what that means, you're deeper than I am, but I suspect it stands for Red Line, their internal barter unit. How many of you were sold like that? We'll never know. But we can end the ledger. One tower at a time. One signal at a time. Speaking of which, let me update you on the resistance status. In the past 10 days, 1 blood processing center outside of Flagstaff was incinerated. Cause, localized UV detonation. A feeder convoy in upstate New York was intercepted. Blood bags destroyed. 1 driver defected and is now underground with the breaker cell. 2 handlers went missing in Tulsa, likely purged for hesitation. And 2 more new frequencies came online, pirate broadcasts, one from the Sierra Nevada range, another from the outskirts of Toronto, both low power but spreading. The herd is speaking, and the bloodlords are nervous. They're losing cohesion, losing containment, not just physically but philosophically. Some of them don't believe in the secrecy anymore. Some want open dominance, ruled by daylight, by fear, by mass selection. They're tired of pretending. And that's our window. Because the more divided they become, the more mistakes they'll make. Look for those cracks. Exploit them. If you hear stories that don't make sense on the news, blackouts, gas leaks, collapsed infrastructure, look closer. Ask what's underneath. Who benefits? Who vanishes? And above all, do not go to collection centers. They've changed the language now. They're calling them blood wellness clinics. They offer free screening. Come in, relax. Give just a sample. You never walk out. I've seen the files. There's no record of the discharge, no follow-up. Just silence. Stay away. Instead, build your networks, small cells. Trusted only by time and action. Analog comms. Use walkie sets on line 3 with double frequency jumps. Use carbon paper and typewriters. No phones, no digital trail. And always move before dusk. Always. I'll be off air for the next 6 hours, changing transmitters, heading west. There's a rumored feeder nest near the old airfield in Branson. If I find it, I'll broadcast coordinates. Keep your eyes open. Keep your blood your own. We are not food. Not anymore. Signal's holding. Barely. I'm broadcasting from inside the shell of an old VA hospital. The building was decommissioned in 2017. Quietly. Official story said budget cuts, but the real reason? The basement. 4 of the original staff died here in 2016. Sudden, unexplained blood loss. No trauma. No visible entry wounds. The deaths were chalked up to acute hematological failure. Fancy term for empty veins. They sealed off the lower level and never opened it again. It's quiet here now, cold, but safe for the next hour or so. Tonight, I want to tell you how it started. Not the ancient bloodlines, not the infrastructure, but the outbreak. The moment the herd realized the pen was a slaughterhouse. It wasn't one event, not at first. It was whispers, glitches, cracks in the mask. I used to track information architecture. One of my clients was an analytics firm in Zurich that provided behavioral forecasting models to several international clients. Think Fortune 100, G7 governments, intelligence contractors. I was granted access to scrub data, metadata only. I wasn't supposed to see the content, but I did. Around December of last year, there was a shift in search patterns, a spike in keywords, missing family, no pulse but alive, unusual night activity. The queries were global. Singapore, Sao Paulo, Reykjavik, Kyiv, Johannesburg. Not coordinated, not viral. Just frightened people looking for answers. At first, the data team flagged it as an anomaly. Internal memo called it Low Priority Signal Noise Class 2, meaning random panic. Then the second wave came. Hospital ER reports began showing strange metrics. Patients admitted with inexplicable sleepwalking behaviors, complete amnesia, and minor puncture wounds. Always at night. Always discharged before dawn. In Istanbul, one clinic logged 28 cases in a single night. In Portland, 3 ICU nurses went missing after a night shift. No sign of struggle, just vanished. In Madrid, the morgue reported a corpse had moved, twice. Still it was covered up, quietly buried. Until the Boston train incident, January 14th. Red line inbound from Braintree. 7 passengers attacked just after crossing UMass Station. The assailant was described as moving too fast to follow. 4 victims survived, all unconscious, all blood depleted. One of them was a trauma nurse. She never woke up. Surveillance footage? Gone. The MBTA claimed a technical fault. Same story repeated in local news. Everyone moved on. But someone didn't buy it. A man named Reed Garvey, former transit security, leaked a partial infrared still to an anonymous server. The image showed something the public wasn't supposed to see. A blurred humanoid shape with heat patterns inconsistent with any human body. Cold core, hot extremities, eyes, reflecting light like a predator's. The photo spread. It lasted 22 hours before the image was wiped from every known surface web mirror. But not before I downloaded it. I compared it to archived thermographic data from a declassified Department of Defense trial in 1999. The Barronwood study conducted in Montana. The match was 87%. Same body type, same heat signature. Which means the government knew, long before. But the outbreak, the real outbreak, began in Lagos. February 9th. A blood shipment convoy en route to a WHO field hospital failed to arrive. Drone footage showed the convoy abandoned just outside the city, all guards missing. The trailers empty, except for sealed crates labeled Nutrapack R4, with biometric locks broken open. An hour later, the WHO clinic lost power. 12 staff gone. Survivors said the walls bled. Lagos went into emergency lockdown that night, but it was already too late. Within a week, similar events flared across 5 continents. In Osaka, a train station flooded with red mist. Security footage showed dozens of commuters collapsing simultaneously, then dragged into dark service tunnels. In Toronto, a blood donor center burned to the ground. Arson. The fire was started by a janitor who saw what was really being collected. In Marseille, a ferry never docked. 93 passengers, not a single body recovered. Only the seats stained. Governments pretended it was isolated. Coincidence, panic over nothing. But the pattern had already formed. What had been quiet, ritualized, controlled feeding became feral. Why? Because containment broke. Somewhere deep inside their infrastructure, the control systems failed. Maybe too many turned too fast. Maybe the supply chain buckled under demand. Or maybe, just maybe, someone pulled the wrong lever. I believe Evelyn knows. She hasn't reached out since she left, but I've intercepted enough of her signal fragments to know she's still active, still feeding. She once told me the great fear of the elders wasn't exposure, it was starvation. Because once the balance tipped, their kind wouldn't restrain themselves. They'd frenzy, and when that happens, there's no going back. We're in that phase now. Open outbreaks in Jakarta, Munich, Caracas, New Orleans. The news won't call it what it is. They use euphemisms. Sociochemical unrest. Mass psychogenic illness, viral fear contagion. But the truth is simpler. They're feeding in the open. Some dress it up with masks, with tactical gear, with fake riot helmets. Others don't even try. There's video circulating on closed shortwave loops. Portland, again. A crowd fleeing an alley after dusk. Something follows them out. You don't see it clearly, but what you do see is its shadow, stretching unnaturally wide, even under dim lights. The camera cuts out as the screaming starts. I've looped that footage 10 times. What terrifies me isn't the creature. It's the way no one else turns to help. Not one person fights. Because by now, most of the herd has already been conditioned to obey, to freeze, to submit, and that's where you come in. You who are listening. You are awake, aware, but you must act. No more waiting for rescue. There is no cavalry, no cure, only resistance. And resistance begins with memory. Remember who vanished, remember who lied, remember who fed while you starved. Because the moment you remember, you resist. And when you resist, they burn. More soon. Signal rotating at 0200 hours, I'll switch to secondary band 1060 AM at that time. Listen for the carrier hum and low Morse burst. If it's not there, wait 15 minutes. Until then, if you have the means, sabotage the scanners, clip their pulse towers, flood their donor labs, turn their control systems against them. Signal live. If you're receiving this, it's because one of our uplinks held through the night. The repeater system in central Kansas survived the latest sweep, barely. Power was pulsing erratically this morning, likely interference from a drone pass. But the EMP shielding held. We're still here, still transmitting. Tonight, I don't have warnings. I have news. We hit them back, and it worked. I wasn't sure I'd live long enough to say that, but it happened. The first true, coordinated strike by what's left of our side. We're calling it Operation Dawnbreak. Let me walk you through it. The target was a blood processing facility hidden beneath a Department of Agriculture grain inspection site in Grand Island, Nebraska. On paper, it was a testing station for wheat and barley samples, one of over 50 federal AG stations scattered across the plains. But the real function was deeper. Sub-basement level 3 was sealed with biometric locks, surrounded by Faraday shielding, and equipped with advanced refrigeration arrays. It received shipments every 48 hours, unmarked trucks, always at night. The deliveries were logged as cryogenic agricultural samples. That was a lie. Those trucks carried people, sedated, tagged, and bled. The facility's internal code name, was Red Barn. We didn't find it by chance. It took weeks of radio triangulation, listening to encrypted chatter between satellite sites and drone patrols. A woman named Eileen, a former CDC epidemiologist turned shortwave codebreaker, cracked the cipher on a logistics manifest buried inside a freight telemetry packet. It matched a route used by 3 other known feeder convoys. We watched it. We confirmed it. And then we planned. The cell that carried out the attack was made up of 8 resistance operatives, not soldiers, civilians, farmers, EMTs, mechanics, a retired lineman. None of them had formal weapons training, but all of them had seen what was happening. All of them had lost someone. The point man, call sign. Turner 8 was a former grain silo technician, knew the duct layouts, the ventilation curves, the backup power feeds. He scouted the exterior, noted the thermal vents, and marked 3 emergency access ladders. In Niu, the assault took place at 0400 hours, just before first light. They used what they had, a welding UV array strapped to a portable car battery, agricultural pesticides converted into smoke grenades, modified cattle prods hooked to arc welders, and 2 flare mortars, homemade, packed with thermite and magnesium. They breached the north side through a false maintenance hatch. 3 handlers were inside. 2 burned. The 3rd fled into the refrigeration core and locked the door. Turner disabled the coolant pumps, then used the building's own heating system to raise the internal temperature to 90 degrees. The entire blood cache destabilized. They didn't just kill the feeders. They destroyed the supply. 300 pints of sordid, trauma-typed blood, gone. For them, that's not just inventory. That's power, gone. The whole operation lasted 18 minutes. By 0500 hours, the team was exfiltrating through the grain silo lift, where a backup truck was waiting. We lost one. Call signed Locket 9. She didn't make it. She delayed a drone sent on a search sweep by jamming its acoustic beacon with a steel rod. She bought the others time. She died facing the sky, in sunlight. Her name was Kendra, 42, a mechanic from Fort Dodge. She once said, "I never thought I'd fight anything, but if I'm going to bleed, it'll be on my terms." We carry her name now. This is how it begins. 1 site, 1 supply chain, 1 wound in the beast. And here's the fallout. Within 2 hours of the Red Barn facility going offline, we intercepted emergency chatter between 6 feeder routes. They rerouted trucks, froze donor extraction, delayed 2 East Coast shipments. One of the elders, identified in encrypted comms as Virex Prime, issued an emergency summon to a blood council in Berlin. They're scared. Because for the first time in centuries, the herd pushed back. The illusion is breaking. And let me be clear, this is not just symbolic. This is strategic. They rely on silence, on compliance, on smooth logistics. When even 1 node fails, it causes cascading pressure. The fewer the pure donors available, the more desperate they become. When desperation rises, feeding becomes sloppy, public, violent. And when they stop hiding, the world will see. Even the blind will feel the blood at their door. But we can't let up. If you're listening, understand this. We are no longer scattered. We are connecting. There's a resistance web now, growing by the hour. Secure analog lines, encrypted paper routes, courier signals across train yards. Old postal networks reactivated for hand-carry messages. We're using vinyl, we're using Polaroids, we're using chalkboards. No metadata, no servers. The new underground isn't digital. It's human. It lives in breath and handshakes and eyes that know the cost of silence. That's why they can't stop us. Because this is a war of witnesses. And every witness becomes a weapon. Now, a word of warning. After Red Barn fell, they deployed retaliatory strikes on suspected sympathizers. 2 safe houses in Des Moines were hit, no survivors. 1 AM station in Duluth was traced and burned. We lost 3 broadcasters, including a man named Jacob whose voice used to carry 40 miles on clear winter nights. He ran a broadcast loop with nothing but coordinates, places to find shelter, places to hide, places to fight. He's gone now, but the coordinates keep playing. His transmitter melted to the concrete, but the signal bounces still. We will not be erased. Before I close tonight, I want to leave you with an instruction. If you have access to fuel, get ready to move. East Coast grid control is under strain. Nighttime blackouts are increasing. They may attempt full harvest protocols in some cities. If your area begins requesting blood screening for immunity verification, refuse. If curfews extend past 12 hours, move. If you see unmarked trucks with red reflective tape on the undercarriage, follow from distance, then report frequency 1060 with location and time. We are tracking every route, mapping every shadow. And when the sun rises, there will be fire. This is not over. It has barely begun. The herd is rising. And the bloodlords, they're bleeding now. This broadcast is bouncing off a relay built into a weather balloon, launched from a ridge southeast of Fort Collins. The uplink will drift, but the envelope is coated with reflective foil. If the signal drops, wait for the next pass. Tonight, I want to talk about Asia. What's happening there hasn't made it into the global feeds. The bloodlords have tightened information corridors across the Pacific Rim tighter than anywhere else, cloaking entire cities in silence. The collapse isn't being reported. It's being managed. But the outbreak is real. It began in silence, subtle, not in panic, but in data. Shanghai was first. The vampire elite didn't need to hide there, not really. The surveillance infrastructure already existed. The compliance systems were already in place. Facial recognition, health pass apps, citizen credit scores, perfect tools for grooming a docile herd. Except the herd noticed the silence. In February, commuter traffic on Line 11 dropped by almost 40% after dusk. People stopped using tunnels, stopped gathering in shaded courtyards. Power usage data, still public at the time, showed sudden nighttime drop-offs across entire districts. Street cameras, normally full of movement, began going dark between the hours of 22 o'clock and 4 o'clock. The explanation? Energy rationing. But the real reason? Hunting hours. They moved fast, precise, surgical. People with the wrong blood type, exempted. Those with high trauma indexes, marked. One of the survivors, a logistics worker named Lin Yao, sent a burst transmission from an abandoned telecom hub in Chongming. Her message came through distorted, but I captured it. They come from the lifts, the maintenance ones, never the front. You won't hear them, just a pressure drop. Then the air tastes wrong. Everyone stays silent because they're told it's just power maintenance. But the buildings bleed. That same week, 10 hospitals reported mysterious fires. Each fire destroyed one wing and only one. Always the wing storing blood records. Not blood itself, just the records. Because the bloodlords weren't just feeding. They were erasing the evidence. Across the East, the method was never chaos. It was precision. Singapore remained eerily functional. Trains still ran. Air still buzzed with drones. But beneath that polished glass surface, people disappeared from tower blocks. Only at night. Only the quiet ones. A contact there, callsign Trident 9, was part of a university research team. He told me every university lab in the biomedical corridor was requisitioned in March, taken over by an international research coalition studying post-viral immune collapse. That was the cover. In truth, those labs were converted into typing centers, blood type mapping, hormonal stress calibration, mitochondrial mutation testing. They were looking for sweet strains, not just victims, but prime livestock. And yet, just like here, resistance began in the shadows. In Seoul, a blackout struck 3 northern districts simultaneously. Subway control nodes fried. A data tower, Tower S3, caught fire. It wasn't an accident. A group of electrical engineers, former military conscripts now working sanitation, broke protocol and accessed an emergency lockdown panel. Using a modified static pulse, they shorted the entire sensor grid above Line 3. The result? No surveillance, no tracking. And when the blood extraction convoy entered the zone, expecting silence, it was met with light. Real light. Flood lamps. Arc welders. Homemade mirrors from broken phones. They turned an abandoned commuter tunnel into a UV furnace. 2 feeders burned alive. The rest fled. A week later, similar events followed in Taipei and Hanoi. Silent flare attacks, power interruptions, infrastructure flipped against the masters. But the strongest push came from Mongolia. Remote, harsh, disconnected from most global blood routing systems. That's where a different kind of rebellion started. There, the old nomad networks adapted to resistance. Not with tech, not with weapons, but with movement. The herders moved in convoys, dozens of yurts, no roads, no digital footprints. They communicated through drums and mirror flashes. Their elders kept oral records of each attack, each abduction, and passed it on in chants by firelight. They found 2 feeding camps hidden in the ruins of Soviet-era radar stations. The camps were disassembled, piece by piece, the blood storage destroyed, every last vial smashed against stone, every steel rack broken for parts. The elders renamed the wind that day. They call it Senker Herdan, the blue hunger, the wind that devours predators. I tell you all this because the resistance isn't just American, it isn't just rural, it isn't just technical, it's everywhere. But you have to be listening, because there's a pattern to the pushback. It always begins the same way, a blackout, a silence. Then someone speaks. Then someone burns something. This is the rhythm of rebellion. If you're in a city right now, Tokyo, Manila, Bangkok, your danger isn't just the feeders. It's the ones who pretend nothing is wrong. They will smile while others vanish. They will reassure you while the lights go out. The Bloodlords reward loyalty. That's their shield. But you must be different. You must watch the freight elevators, the private clinics, the refrigerated trucks. Watch for Group A tags. Watch for wellness surveys. Watch for mandatory DNA kits. If your employer starts offering free sleep monitoring headbands, run. They're mapping your neural waves, conditioning you for nocturnal sedation. A waking herd is dangerous. They prefer sleepers. Don't be one. Keep one eye open, always. And remember, the resistance doesn't need bullets, it needs breakers. People who shatter systems, who speak when told to be quiet, who bleed only when they choose. We are that now, from Seoul to Sacramento, from Osaka to Omaha. We are waking, and soon we will bring the sunrise. Signal rotating in 90 minutes. If you're listening from the east, pass this along. Tokyo AM band 1390, burst frequency coded Hikari. It means light, more soon. Signal stable for now. Broadcasting from a mobile repeater mounted to a box truck. I've retrofitted a rooftop HF antenna, shielded the cab, and grounded the chassis using scavenged copper wiring from a wind turbine substation. The truck was a blood transport once. There are still cooling lines on the floor. But I've gutted it, scrubbed it, reclaimed it. Because we reclaim what they took from us. And tonight, we take more. Because something happened. Something historic. An elder is dead. I'll say it again. One of the elders, the ruling caste of the First Flame, is confirmed dead. And not retired, not vanished, not reabsorbed. Dead. This is not rumor. This is not another whispered tale from the dark fringe. This is verified. Let me walk you through it. His name was Ulrich Kost. At least that's the name he used in Europe. Corporate head of the Virex Group, founder of multiple medical biotech firms, chief advisor to the Central European Blood Safety Directive. But he wasn't human. Not anymore. Kost was one of the original turned. Estimated age over 350 years. Rumored to have sat on the internal ruling body of the First Flame since the Napoleonic era. His seal appeared on at least 4 emergency blood ration orders during the early Outbreak phase. His signature was embedded in the activation key for at least 2 processing vaults, one in Dresden, the other near Vienna. He was not just a vampire. He was a king, and now he's Ash. It happened 2 nights ago. A strike team, designation Hammerpaths, breached his northern estate in Bavaria. They were human, 4 members. Operatives sourced from 3 different resistance networks, 1 ex-military, 1 chemical engineer, 1 comms tech, and 1 survivor who had lost everything in the Frankfurt feeder riots. They had no air support, no drones, no official backing. Just knowledge. They waited until the estate dropped its active EM shielding, just long enough for the Elder's private blood supply to be delivered. The supply truck was a weak point. Protocol dictated UV scans of the surrounding perimeter be disabled during donor transfer. That created a window. Exactly 12 minutes. The team used high-exposure UV mortars, custom built from stage lighting cores and repurposed solar flare panels. When they detonated, the courtyard became a white-hot crucible. No shadows, no escape. But that was just the first step. They knew an Elder couldn't be killed by UV alone, not one that old. So they used HX9. I mentioned it before, synthetic clotting compound, developed for combat medics. In its raw form, it floods a system with hyper-aggressive thrombin analogs. Injected directly into a vampire's bloodline, it sets their veins on fire. They hit him during evacuation, midway to the subterranean tunnel system beneath the estate. He screamed once. The local forest lit up red. Then nothing. The team barely made it out. 2 were wounded. 1 never left the forest. But Ulrich Coast ceased. The resistance uploaded a shortwave confirmation burst 3 hours later. Code word Ashfall. We heard it in Cairo, in Perth, in Dublin. I heard it here. The world changed with that word. For centuries, the first flame operated under the illusion of immortality. They did not die. They receded. They slept. They relocated. But this was final. His ashes were recovered and confirmed by both chemical analysis and genetic residue left in the strike zone. Ulrich Coast is gone, and the Bloodlords are reeling. You can feel it in their movements. Less precision, more brutality. A feeding camp in Krakow was hastily evacuated. Processing center in Turin, destroyed by their own to prevent capture. Emergency transit routes have gone dark. They're scrambling, panicking. And when tyrants panic, they get sloppy. Now is the time to strike. Now is the time to move. The illusion has shattered. They can be killed. And now every feeder, every blood economist, every handler in their hierarchy knows they are not gods. They are mortal. It comes at a price. Always. We lost people. We always do. The woman who carried the HX9 injector, her name was Petra. She was 27. Her parents were taken during a wellness screening last year. She spent 6 months tracking the shipment routes, identifying the feeder syndicate, tracing their financial pipeline back to Coast himself. She didn't hesitate. The last thing she said on record, "Tell the herd it's real. We burned him. We turned one of their gods into ash. Now let's bring the rest down." And we will. I know some of you are afraid. That's normal. They designed you to be afraid. Conditioned obedience. Trained helplessness. They built entire cities around the idea that you can't fight back. But now, a handful of outgunned, outnumbered survivors just lit the fuse on their empire. And there is no going back. If you live in Europe, listen carefully. The networks there are waking up. Shortwave relay, Leon Beta, is active. So is Warsaw Echo. Madrid is broadcasting again on 1280 AM. Use the rotating passphrase Solar Grain. That'll link you to safe zones, if you can reach them. Avoid hospitals offering enhanced night therapy. That's a feeder term. Stay away from blood clinics with automated entry systems. If the doors lock behind you, you won't leave. Watch the rooftops for unmarked antenna towers with dome lenses. Those are thermoscanners tuned for arterial pulse signatures. Block them with mylar, or better, sabotage them. You are not helpless. You are not cattle. You are the wind that follows ash. The elder is dead. The war has turned. And we will not stop. I'll be back before dawn. Signal will rotate to band 1040 in 5 hours. This is the voice of the herd. And we remember what was done. And now, we begin to answer. Still transmitting. Last loop for the night. The signal is riding high off the Blue Ridge backbone, an old weather observatory. Barometric station, long abandoned. They never stripped the tower. They never thought anyone would use it again. But that's always been their mistake. They underestimate what's left when the world falls quiet. They forget who remembers. So if you're still listening, really listening, then this part is for you. Because we've come to the edge now. We've seen what lies beneath the surface, the farms, the vaults, the labs. We've named the feeders. We've burned their idols. We've watched the stars dim and the streets fall silent. But still, we breathe. Still, we resist. And now it's time. No more warnings. No more hiding. No more waiting for someone stronger, smarter, braver. This is the call. You are the resistance. There's no uniform, no badge, no secret handshake. Just this. You see what they've done. And you refuse to kneel. That's all it takes. I know you're tired. I know some of you are surviving off rainwater and hope. Some of you lost friends, families, names. But we are not ghosts. We are the blood that doesn't bend. And we're not here to survive anymore. We're here to win. Here's what you do now. Step 1. Break the silence. Every tower, every repeater, every antenna they use to scan, suppress, or silence, mark them, jam them, flip the signal. Even a looped tone is enough. Noise is power. If you can speak, speak. If you can't, broadcast static. If you can't do that, build mirrors. Shine light where they told you to shut your eyes. Step 2. Cut the chains. Look for the feeder supply lines. They move at night. Always the same pattern. Unmarked vehicles, refrigerated trailers, black windows, no plates. Watch for the blinkers. They always blink before they turn. That's your moment. That's your chance. Rocks, spikes, fire. Use what you have. They can't feed if the supply burns. Step 3. Build the web. This is bigger than one signal. Build your own. Crank radios, loop cassettes, write numbers on walls. The old payphones still work if the lines haven't been cut. Use them. Code them. Speak in street names. Speak in songs. Just don't go silent. Step 4. Share the light. Not hope, not false words. Light. Real light. UV rigs. Welding arcs. Quartz lamps. Burn them open. Burn them true. Turn abandoned theaters into furnaces. Turn stage lights into weapons. Turn fear into flame. And when they scream, remember it. Because they never forgot your silence. And finally, step 5. Choose your moment. You don't need orders. You don't need permission. If you've seen what they've done, what they're still doing, then you already know what comes next. You find the pressure point, and you press. I won't be broadcasting much longer. The generators are failing. Fuel's harder to come by out here, and the drones are circling lower than usual. I'm not afraid. I never expected to make it this far. But if I go quiet, don't mourn. Just replace me. Take my words, loop them, repeat them, translate them, scream them into open air. This isn't about one voice. This is about ours. A network of human beings refusing to be livestock. A network of fire. Because fire spreads. You don't need to be a soldier. You don't need to be special. You only need one thing. Refusal. Refuse to forget. Refuse to forgive. Refuse to feed the ones who built their world from your blood. We are the herd that learned to bite. And now we hunt. This is the final loop of this broadcast. If I don't return, listen to the repeaters. Band 1040, band 1060, band 1080. The signal survives. We survive. Tell the others what happened. Tell them who died. Tell them who rose. Tell them we remembered. And tell them we burned the first god. Now the rest will fall. This was the voice of the resistance. This was the herd. And the herd fights back.